Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another week of our deep lore analysis and episode analysis. This week, focusing on episode 6 of Rings of Power. I'd like to introduce our panel again. Of course, we have, as always, with us V.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here again.
We got Shiv back after a fantastic job hosting a few days ago.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And we've got Javi Marcos, is Marcos, right? Yep. Joining us today from the Spanish Tolkien Society. Javi, why don't you tell everybody listening a little about yourself and your relationship with the world of Tolkien?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here. I met Fellowship of Fans, the Twitter account when you were beginning. When I remember I followed you when you had less than 1,000 followers. And then I met Harry in the London premiere 2 years ago of The Rings of Power. I am a member of the Spanish Tolkien Society. Most of the people know me not talking about Lord of the Rings or Tolkien, but about A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. My website is Los Siete Reinos, the Seven Kingdoms in Spanish language, is the second biggest website in the world and the first in Spanish language about Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, the spin-offs, yada yada. But I love Tolkien. I'm a Spanish Tolkien Society. In my YouTube channel, I also talk about Tolkien sometimes. And I have to say in advance to prepare the audience, because I have a good relationship with Amazon Prime Video. Prime Video sent me the screener. So I have already seen all season 2 of Rings of Power. But, of course, I won't spoil anything. I will just talk about this episode.
Thank you for not spoiling. And maybe we'll have predictions come from other people, or maybe your predictions on next season. Where in Spain are you based, by the way?
I live in Madrid. My family is from Salamanca, but I live in Madrid.
Cool. And we have, of course, Kyle doing a kick-ass job on the back end again. Thank you so much, Kyle. I already saw in the comments, where is Strider? Strider is having a little vacation day, but he may join partway through. So, Rangers got to do important things. They don't always have time for Sunday stream.
That thing is my cat Evie. If you see someone moving in the background, it's my cat Evie, who loves to be on streams. It's that figure
Nice.
Strider may be coming back with a Gollum, or perhaps finding
She's
some
hunting it down.
Yeah, finding some men who betrayed his ancestors under a mountain somewhere. I don't know. Let's move on to the episode, everybody, and let's start with this. We got a whole lot of Eregion in this episode, and one of the things I've noticed is sort of a changing relationship between Celebrimbor and his smiths. And it's sort of very hot and cold, and we see a range of things happen in this episode. We'll get to all of that later, but what do you guys think of that element? To me, I guess my question is, we do know that Sauron is supposed to sort of worm his way into Eregion and sort of eventually be the thing that tears the city down. Do you think that the way he's showing sort of almost coming in between Celebrimbor and his smiths is sort of an effective way to approach that? And Javi, why don't we start with you?
Well, I think that, first of all, Eregion plot is the best plot of this season. I think that before the season, people were doubting if transformation from Halbrand to Sauron to Anatar would be believable, if the audience would be able to understand that it's a different character that is manipulating the elves of Eregion, and the result has been superb. So I am very happy that Eregion covers most of the episode, because it's the best plot of the show, at least for me. But listening to the audience, I am reading people on Twitter saying that it's the best villain, the best evil character this year on TV, and it's difficult to argue against that, because Anatar Sauron has been superb. For me, the transformation of Charlie Dickens from the rock Halbrand of season 1 to this totally manipulative character has been superb. It's for me, maybe the best casting of the show has been both Halbrand and Sauron. And I think that the manipulation of Celebrimbor is believable. Sometimes you may think Celebrimbor is not very smart. Sometimes you may think he's being very easily manipulated. But come on, remember how Anatar presented to Celebrimbor. He looked like a divine figure with the flames. So if you are an elf and you see that kind of, you see a Maya, you don't know what's the name of this character, but this guy is not a human, is not an elf, it's a super human, super being. It's a Maya. If not a Valar, it's a little a Maya. So of course Celebrimbor will obey everything that he says because he sees in Anatar a kind of power that he simply cannot accomplish. Yes, that's a divine intervention. So you cannot fight against this.
Yeah. Well, real quick before I get into specific questions, V, Shiv, do you guys have anything you want to add to that? Do you agree, disagree, or is there sort of a sort of nuance you want to comment on that?
No, I think Javi covered pretty well the sentiment about Anatar and the Smiths and everything that's happening in Eregion, and I'm really glad to see Eregion more. Because after all, we didn't spend a lot of time there in season 1, and I think that in order for the speculated ending of season 2 to be as huge as possible, we have to spend more time there. So it's good that they are doing that in the series.
Yeah, it's also pretty interesting. Season 1, everyone was pretty much almost unanimously saying the best plot was the dwarves and Durin and Elrond, and it's pretty cool to see now season 2 we're getting Eregion being the one of the fan favorites. So it's kind of cool. The show's bouncing around, honing in on different plots.
Yeah. And I think in general, what I've seen a lot of people saying is that they think the show has been getting stronger as it's been going on, particularly this season. It's just getting stronger through these 6 episodes. Do you guys generally agree with that? And Kyle, let's get a poll on our audience here. Yes or no, has the show been getting stronger as it's been going along? And let's start with you, V. What do you think, and do you have a piece of evidence to support your opinion one way or the other?
Wait, microphones is always like disappointing me lately. Can you repeat the question a bit because I got lost on your
yeah. I was just saying the general, I think, opinion I've seen from various people, we haven't talked about it yet, but has been that the show's been sort of getting stronger as it's been going on. Do you agree with that opinion, and why?
Totally, I agree with that. And I've seen that on Twitter a lot since I'm admin there. I think it makes a lot of sense because season 1 was setting up the chess pieces and making us understand how Middle-earth works in this show and where exactly its character is, and giving us a more peaceful and not very dramatic storyline. And basically having that as a baseline, it allowed season 2 to come and change the status quo that they have created in season 1, and therefore see the movement actually of the show. So in my opinion, season 1 was very the first 2 chapters of a book where you have everything explained, the world building is set up, and season 2 now we are starting to get the actual story and what the showrunners wants to tell us. And I think they are doing it pretty well, especially with the Eregion storyline driving it across, and the elves in particular have taken a big hit. So since they are putting those as our protagonists and seeing them getting involved in action, the storyline is moving forward very strongly. And in my opinion, since this is the central story and this is what moving the show forward. So yeah.
I don't want to hype you, but in my opinion, episodes 7 and 8 are maybe the best of the season. For me, episode 7 is the best of the season. Better than 8.
Playing
it will be it will be hugely controversial. Internet will be on flames. There is going to happen something that will make a lot of people pretty upset and very enraged. But as a TV episode, the show will be even better because the final arc of the season is pretty strong.
Okay, you heard it here first, folks. Strap up. Thursday is going to be dope, apparently. So that's that's always good to know from someone who's already watched it, that we have something really fun to look forward to. So thank you for that. By the way, Priscilla mentioned the thing. Thank you so much, Priscilla. Please like and of course subscribe. It really helps us out with the algorithm and all that business. Thanks for Priscilla for calling that out. Much appreciated. Shiv, I have one thing I've been sort of noticing, or in this sort of the first few minutes of episode 6, right? We see Celebrimbor kept having these sort of senile moments. Javi said something earlier where maybe you think he's not so smart, and actually this particular image that Kyle has up right now, I think really demonstrates it, right? Like it almost has this feel of like an elderly man with like Alzheimer's who forgot where he is or something like that. I think we've been introduced to the idea in previous elements of Tolkien's Legendarium, that elves have, if not perfect, at least fantastic memory, right?
Yep.
And it's, we're seeing him forget the name of a smith who, even if she's a young, he's known for 500 years probably. Is he freaked out enough, or do you think that having him forget things was like an appropriate sort of way to demonstrate this, or did it feel too not elfish for you, or does it really did you like it as a way of exploring sort of exactly how weird and crazy whatever Sauron's doing is?
Yeah, I guess in terms of like an adaptation, trying to translate from the book to screen, you have to make some kind of creative choices that visualize certain contexts. And I personally liked it. It kind of humanizes him quite a bit. It's like you said, like elves are known to have like perfect memory or near perfect memory. So him forgetting stuff, it's conveying that he is hyper stressed out. And on the other end of things, as the audience, we know he's being manipulated by Sauron. He's we saw, I think, in this scene, the hammer and how Anatar Sauron manipulated him by making a hammer disappear, making him feel forgetful, and then he made it reappear. So yeah, it's pretty sad and tragic to see. It's kind of a relatable thing if you have grandparents going through Alzheimer's and stuff like that, and we have someone doing it to someone on purpose, which is pretty vengeful.
I know that we have to understand now, finishing season 2, this show is a bit far, if not very far off Tolkien Legendarium, okay? We have to understand that it's an adaptation, and even being an adaptation, the showrunners did a lot of choices that, even having not a lot of material, they diverge a lot from the material. But one of the small things that is totally canon in the show is how Sauron manipulates the elves. Is that Sauron manipulated Celebrimbor. Maybe the show has totally changed the order of the rings, and the 3 shouldn't be on the first one, and okay. But those super intelligent elves from the first age, the best smiths of Middle Earth, were totally manipulated by Sauron. So they made it in the show, for me, at least believable. So we can complain about a lot of things about this show, but that thing shouldn't be a point of critic for me.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, we just had a comment up from Julie about how great Charlie Vickers is in this, and I agree. What do you guys think of Charles Edwards' performance? I think people have been talking about his quite a bit, but still maybe not quite as much as Charlie Vickers. What do you think of this portrayal? For me, it seems pretty effective, even if it's whatever you think of the sort of decision to portray this relationship this way, that I personally think Charles Edwards doing a great job with it. What do you guys think? Who wants to jump in? We got Strider, but I don't know if you heard that. Otherwise, Strider, are you here?
Hey, do you hear me?
Everybody. Yes,
I mean,
welcome,
while
Strider.
Strider
Hi, hi.
is setting up his game.
I'll just be here for a while. So, what's the question?
We were talking about do you think that Charles Edwards has been a match for Charlie Vicker as far as the acting side of things? Even if the character dynamic one clearly has the power, how do you feel about sort of their match as acting partners?
Oh, I think it's a match made in heaven or in hell, I guess. I think they really, really did a great job filling in with each other, and I think I mean he's a Shakespearean actor. He's a stage thing to Celebrimbor that I think will really make him.
I have to say that in the first season, for me, it was.
You know
was
what Vigo. I think he's terrific.
Sorry, I thought you had finished. Sorry, I have to say, for me, in the first season, for me, Edward was miscast, because I couldn't imagine someone as Celebrimbor so old. That's the truth. For me, these characters shouldn't look older than, for example, Galadriel. Galadriel is older than Celebrimbor, one generation older, in fact. So we know they changed the actor because the first actor didn't have the chemistry or wasn't comfortable with the role. Okay, for me, the best Celebrimbor season 1 was not a success, but this one is looking very convincing. And as people are saying in the chat, like for example Laura is saying, there is a real chemistry. You can see how Celebrimbor appreciates a lot Sauron talent, and how Sauron, being very powerful, needs some of the talent that Celebrimbor has. So I am very happy, and I think that his decay, his road to madness, or at least losing memory, but all of us have seen this image of the trailer where Celebrimbor looks totally broke. That means he's doing a very good arc of character and looking very convincing in this. Of course, it's a very juicy role, okay? It's more juicy, this role, that, for example, what Elrond has been doing all season, that has not been doing exactly a lot. This role is if you are a good actor, it's very easy to make of this role a very good performance. But Edward is exactly doing that.
Javi, I totally agree. I think I've even said it on this stream before. I was not a fan of Celebrimbor in first season, but I feel like he gets like comeback player of the year award because he is crushing it.
100%.
That's just my personal opinion. You know what else I really like about Eregion this season is I think there was a common criticism last season that while the place looked pretty, it didn't feel lived in, and I feel like that's changed quite a bit in this season. V, what is your opinion, Ben, on? Yeah, let's go back to that last shot you had up for just half a second, Kyle, with the crowd. Yeah, that's beautiful. V, what's your opinion of Eregion this season in terms of the feeling of it being lived in and sort of the set itself and just in general this sort of world that we're creating here? Do you think it sort of matches with how you imagined Eregion reading Tolkien?
So what they've done basically this season, they have given some more administrative view in this point. Like, you have to remember that Celebrimbor is not only a smith, he's the Lord of Eregion, so he has to do the ruling of the place. And I think it's very brilliant that instead of us getting to see Celebrimbor ruling the place before, we just get to see Anatar basically getting his place as Lord of Eregion and sort of replacing him in a sense with his own people. And this for me does two things at a time. First, you understand how it was before Celebrimbor becoming so consumed by the rings. Like, his people were gathering outside of his workshop to get advice and to resolve all of their matters. And the second thing that it does is, now that he replaces Anadar in this role, it basically tells you how on top of everything Anadar is and how deep his manipulation is. Like, he basically gets to be the administrator of Eregion and order people around to do his bidding, even more subtly, but yeah. And the top thing for me was during Anadar's vision, like the manipulation that he manufactured around Celebrimbor. Basically, he showed us a glimpse of normality from Eregion, because Celebrimbor didn't find something wrong about it. It found it very normal, and that's what made him at ease. Which means that what we saw in the vision was actually how Eregion would look like in a regular basis. So I think it was really beautiful to basically show us the normality through the absorption of the normality. And I found it really clever. So, and I think it's actually the place that we have seen more lived on in the series. Even in Lindon, didn't look that much lived on in season 1. It looked more like an administrative capital that just people go for official matters. So yeah.
You know what? You were talking about that sort of illusion that Anatar creates for Celebrimbor. There was something that was mentioned in the stream the other day that Shiv hosted, which is that they did that in camera. Kyle, if you happen to have that on hand, I would love to show everybody in the stream that. I thought that was just one of the coolest things I've seen. It was so, one of those moments that you just assume is CGI, and you realize they did it in camera, and you're like, holy crap. Yeah, look at this.
Yeah, we cannot see that enough.
This is the best scene of the episode, and one of the best scenes because the transition looks so smooth, and that's because it's real. It's not, as you said, it's not CGI.
Javi, I know a little bit about what everyone else here thinks about the first season and its relationship with this season, but this is the first time we've chatted about it. As far as things like the production value and the quality, just in general, do you feel like which parts do you think are about the same? Are there any parts that you thought the first season did better? Are there any aspects that you think are vastly improved in the second season? What's your sort of general?
I have to say that for me, season 2 doesn't look better than season 1. And for me, that's interesting because we don't know the cipher, we don't know the numbers, we don't know the total investment of Amazon Prime for season 2. But I was expecting this show to get bigger every year. Okay, most of the TV shows that are popular are watched by a lot of people. Every season they have more budget. So with more budget, they use more resources to do more special effects, more production. I have been very lucky because, for example, I interviewed Sana Hamri, who is the director of this episode. I didn't interview her for Rings of Power, but for The Wheel of Time. But I interviewed her. I interviewed other people from the production of The Wheel of Time, and I know that of course, The Wheel of Time has less than half of the budget of Rings of Power. But we know that these productions are very costly and have a very high budget of special effects, visual effects, etc. But for me, season 2 is not should look better than season 1, but it for me has the same level. Okay, I think we have seen less very beautiful pictures, images of Numenor, for example. That for me, I remember the first time I saw Numenor in season 1 was wow, this is perfect. This season Numenor has not looked as good. The temple for me didn't look exactly great. This Numenor from season 2, the scene from the season was great, but it was not an studio. It was in Canary Islands. We will talk about that. Eregion has looked very nice, but the set is a bit small for me, in my opinion. Khazad-dum is impressive. Khazad-dum, every time you see Khazad-dum on screen is superb. But Arondir plots in the south, the Pelargir plot, and also the Rune plot doesn't look like a I don't know, 50, 18 million dollar per episode. So at least for me.
Cal, put up a Shiv's comment about Brat Summer. I thought that was
I'm just cooking in the chat.
yeah. Someone said, I'm trying to scroll back a little bit so I can see what the comment was. I'm coming to you with this one, Shiv. Looks like we lost Strider again. It's all right. I'm sure he's just doing some more ranging. Maybe he'll be back, maybe not. Okay, so I might butcher this name. Apologies if I do. D. Hechimovich says, Anatar learned from Aule. Why does he need Celebrimbor for the forging? And sorry, Kyle, that one was a little further back, but I'm sure you'll find it. My question is, Shiv, what's your take on that? Are you do you think that there's anything that you can see for why Sauron would need Celebrimbor in the help of forging these rings to begin with? Why he didn't just do it himself? And obviously this is a question going back to Tolkien itself, right? Because Tolkien has this dynamic. It's not like a Rings of Power thing. What is it that makes Celebrimbor so special that he's able to do something that Sauron wouldn't be able to do himself?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll see how I can do with this. I remember I wish I remember the source, but I've been watching a lot of Tolkien content recently, and one of the streams was mentioning how a lot of events echo in Tolkien's work, and the echo kind of dilutes as it goes down the line. Like you think of all the epic battles, they kind of get smaller and smaller. The Silmarils were massive. All the implications from that were massive. And now we're moving on to the rings, which also have a similar echo to the Silmarils, where you have people that are getting corrupted by them and wars over them, etc. So to kind of answer your question, the way I picture it, at least, I can't say whether or not this is accurate or if this is headcanon, but I like the idea that Sauron Anatar needs physical hands from Middle Earth to create or help create the rings, instead of it just being a Maiar creating it on its own. I like the idea that it needs elven craftsmiths, even blacksmiths of the human race, Numenorians, etc. But that's kind of where I land with it. Is I like the idea that the Maiar have to work together with actual races of Middle Earth to craft the rings to then influence the races of Middle Earth.
That's a really cool theory, Shiv. I mean, and there's something I buy in that too, right? That in a sense, the Maiar and the Valar, they are in a sense apart, right? They're supposed to be sort of the guardians of Arda, so to speak, but they're not really in it and of it in the same way. And so maybe they need, Sauron needs creatures of it to be able to control and dominate the other creatures of it. That's a really interesting theory. We need someone with a higher level of a degree in Tolkien studies maybe to answer that with more authority. But it's a really, really good hypothesis, I think.
Tolkien never stated publicly in any letter, in any time, because maybe nobody asked specifically about this topic, why Sauron needed Celebrimbor. But I think it's very logical from a narrative point of view, because we know that Mayas are more involved in Middle-earth politics and stuff, but are totally out of this way. But it would be very strange for a Maya to simply present and, okay, I made those rings are for you. If you remember Tolkien canon, Anatar presents into Lindon and Gil-galad rejects Anatar. That's canon of the Second Age. So Sauron couldn't just do those rings. Sauron needed someone to be like the artificer of those rings. That artificer would be like the master of this idea of creating rings, and people on Middle Earth believe Celebrimbor, trust Celebrimbor. They won't trust a new Maya who suddenly appeared and nobody knows about him. But people trust Celebrimbor. So it was a very, very useful tool, a very useful puppet to manipulate. So it makes perfect sense. Of course, I think we all agree that Sauron as a Maya could have created everything. But for example, created a ring that would be trustworthy for the rings, for the elves, would be very difficult for just a random Maya to make and accept for the elves.
Right. And as our Un says, weren't the Silmarils impressive even to Valar? Like they couldn't recreate them, and yeah, right. They were all in awe of what Fëanor had done. Strider, Strider was back. Is he still? Strider?
Yeah.
Strider?
I'm here.
Great. Oh, you are there. Great. What do you think about all this?
Yeah.
Do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I think so. Firstly, I think that I would say there are like two ways I would answer this. One is, Sauron was a Maya of Howl, and he obviously knows a lot. He is the greatest he's the most powerful of the Maiar. But I feel like he spent a lot of his time on doing a lot of bad stuff, which is kind of a theme with him.
There's
Gifts and so on like corruption. Do you hear me?
Yes, and then you cut out briefly, and he came back. Go for it.
Okay.
We'll let you know how it went.
Yeah. So I feel like he spent a lot of his energy on that weren't really contributing to anything. And while we have the Noldor, and specifically Celebrimbor being the grandson of Fëanor, and them being the children of Ilúvatar, as children of Ilúvatar, they are meant to create all these really cool things to like enrich the world, but also the fact that they kind of specialized in all of this. So I feel like both of them had gifts that could contribute to the other one in order to develop this completely new, let's call it, technology. So I feel like they both come from like different angles and bring different gifts or like a different contribution to build this new technology together. So I feel like they both needed each other in a way.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Annoying Critic has a comment here. I'm not sure it's fruitful to look too closely for plot holes as long as they are not large enough to throw you out of the story. I want to say something. I think that's wise, right? You can start looking down into Citizen Kane and Shawshank Redemption and find plot holes and then be pissed and never see the movie the same. You can do it with anything. But I also wonder, where's the line where something has to have enough internal integrity to sort of hold up to begin with? I think that line might be different for everyone else. But just I'm just curious, like, what's your personal take on that? When you are watching a piece of media, are you sort of going in sort of inherently critical, or are you just taking it as it is until something pulls you out? And where do you think Rings of Power falls on that spectrum?
So I think like watching a piece of media just to critique it and watch it to enjoy it is completely different things. Since it's not my job to like critique and stuff like that, I don't really mind like going blissfully unaware of. I think that it's inherently like for everyone that if you like something, nobody can make you like dislike it easily. And especially when it comes like to media and consumption, like the first time you see it without anyone's influence, then it really depends. It's very like, depending on you. For me, I don't really mind, like it has to be something very intense to like get me out or remind me of something else very much to get me out of something. I like to have connections throughout like a show or a movie or whatever, like callbacks to previous stuff and sort of clues connecting to one another. But at the same time, if there aren't any, I won't like create them on my own. And I think with the show in particular, I really enjoy that I don't know exactly what piece of law they will use next, because if we knew everything, there wouldn't be a point exactly in it. So I like the combination of like knowing and not knowing at the same time. I don't know if you understand that, because like you know what's happening, you know the law, but at the same time you don't know how it will go there. You don't know what route they will use, and especially with the second age that the law isn't even that set, is even more interesting to see what kind of nitpicking they will do for little details and if it will fit, if it will not. So yeah, the show has its problems. At some points I've been completely out of it, for example, a lot of the times with the Harfoots. But for the main part of the story, I really enjoy like combining law with the viewing of the thing and whatever they do. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I have to say that, to be honest, the writers of this show are not the best writers on the industry, okay? And you can clearly see that this is not like, you know, a top HBO drama. This is not Succession. This is not West Wing. This is not The Wire, The Sopranos, okay? And everybody agrees with that. Okay, this is a show that has to be interesting for the audience, entertaining for the fans, and this show has a double point of it, that it has to attract the big audience that love Peter Jackson movies and now love the Rings, but are not especially focused on Tolkien books, but just like fantasy, like Game of Thrones, and they should be bearable, acceptable. I can see this show type of show for the big Tolkien fans, because there are a lot of big Tolkien fans. Okay, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings is one of the is far bigger than Game of Thrones. It's one of the biggest franchises in the world. Okay, it's not Harry Potter, it's not Marvel, but it's a very big franchise, and people who love Lord of the Rings books are really passionate about that. So the problem with this show is that even before season 1, the scrutiny, the kind of analysis that this show has suffered has been terrible. I compare it with the final season of Game of Thrones. In final season of Game of Thrones, the problem was that so many people were watching Game of Thrones that everybody was talking about Game of Thrones. And I know from people from the industry, I know people from HBO, that there were many critics that were years. I want to say something bad about Game of Thrones, and they were preparing for a bad season. And when that came, and that was the final season, when everybody was watching the final season of Game of Thrones, all the critics that were eating their words for 5 or 6 years started to attack like vultures the show. In Rings of Power, that has happened even before one single minute of Rings of Power was shown on Amazon Prime Video. Why? Because there is many people that simply cannot agree a single change of Tolkien lore. And there is also many people, and we have to say that are racist, that are sexist, and cannot accept that that Galadriel is a warrior, that there is a female, black female that is a dwarf princess, and that is the reality. And we have to say that because that's the truth. So this show has been, even before one single minute was shown, I remember when the first trailer was shown, the trailer was shown in Super Bowl 2022, there were tens of thousands of bad comments, of dislikes on YouTube. See, without knowing anything about the argument, just because they saw black people on a screen, because they saw women being warriors. Do you know something about Eowyn, for example? Do you know if there is a character called Eowyn that is a female warrior in Lord of the Rings? So, but people were very crazy. I know people from Amazon, and they told me they got death threats by letter, by postcard. They sent death threats. It's very hard to actually write a letter and send it to the mail, a physical mail, to arrive to Los Angeles offices on Amazon Prime Video just to do a death threat to someone. There is very crazy people out there. So this show is being totally over analyzed, and every single mistake is totally over analyzed and over criticized. That is why I was saying that next week will be crazy. But say Grego. Say Greg.
Yeah. I was going to say, well, first of all, I'm loving the conversation this is setting off in the comments, because I think this is also a bit of a personal question, right? You know, I think it was Laura maybe who said a little while back that for her, even small plot holes can really like be tough for her because she's a script doctor, right? And so she's more attuned to that sort of thing. I think maybe I'm a little bit the same way because I work in the film industry, right? And I think that there are other people who that's not what they're watching for, and you can have bigger plot holes, and they just like seeing these characters, interact with each other and big stakes, and that's totally fine too. And I think you're right that this show has been held to a particular level of scrutiny. I also think it's true that, as you said, that they could really find some sharper writers, because even in this season, which I do believe that the writing is better than the first one, there are certain, like, I'll use one example that for what kind of frustrates me a little bit at some points with this season and the show in general. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess at least most of you saw Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then perhaps Katara as well. Avatar had what I called internal badass consistency, meaning like each character's like badass level was relative and consistent. Dragon Ball Z tends to do this really well because they all have power levels that you can like match to. But then in Katara, it was like certain things were way out of whack with where they should have been based on the power that you'd been taught prior and stuff like that. And I feel like you get some of this in Rings of Power, where like the things that we're meant to expect from one character aren't consistent with how they're then treated in the next episode in terms of their like strength or power versus the relative. So it's those little sorts of things that can be rough for me. But I also think that, the extremity of what we see in the reaction is often completely out of proportion. I think we could talk about this all night. I'm actually really glad we brought up this subject a little bit because I don't think we talk about it much. But we've got a lot of episode to get to, and maybe this is a good point to pivot away. I wanted to spend a lot of time with Anatar and Celebrimbor because I think that is the heart of the episode and really the heart of the season. But let's talk about some other stuff a little bit. Let's talk about Galadriel and Adar. I thought there were some really cool scenes that we had here, and I want to first of all, let's talk about the setup that he has prepared for her. My guess is that Adar isn't eating grapes and stuff like that. What do you think raspberries? What do you think he's trying to send with this message of this sort of buffet that he's laid out before Galadriel? Like what's the message here, Shiv? What do you think's going on?
Oh, it's just like the used car salesman. You want a coffee? You want a water? Can I get you anything? He's buttering her up. But yeah, I think that's what's going on. I know on Friday we talked about the juxtaposition of how she treated him in season 1, where he's basically chained in the barn by himself, to now we get this side of the relationship where he's trying to give her a massive feast. But it seems to be based on how this scene plays out. He was trying to get information from her, so he's buttering her up, loosening her up a bit, and he gets what he wants at the end.
I think Strider, are you still here? Strider's gone. Alas.
Back into the void.
He didn't pay the Palantir tax this week.
I kind of want to bounce off what Shiv was saying. We've had a lot of people, back to the conversation we were just having, who are really hating on Galadriel and stuff. But there is some legitimacy, I think, to Adar being in some ways a more compassionate character. And obviously we get a lot of shakeup over the course of this episode in that relationship. But at this point, by the time this scene happens, would you say that you are team Adar or team Galadriel? Like who are you rooting for more at this point in the show? And Kyle, if you could get that question out to our audience, I'd love that. I want to see the poll on this.
I think it's not that fair to Adar to do that question, to be honest, when you know what's coming up next, because having seen the episode, that's basically just manipulatively AF, and he was just trying to butt her up. But at the same time, I think it's really interesting how the writers are nitpicking at this niche question of the morality of orcs and all that. And for Adar in particular, I think he still is a bit of an elf inside of him. I mean, the armor that he wears, we have analyzed it other times, has the reference like the river flow that you see the pattern in the clothes of Elrod and Gil-galad in season 1 in particular. I want to root for Adar to go like back to the light, but I know that this is not happening, and it's a very like idealistic thing to expect. But I love that we get people to actually root for him. I won't root for him because I know that Galadriel has gone through enough already. She doesn't need to be manipulated by another man trying to like sugarcoat everything for her and make her go his way, because that's what's happening in this episode. Like we see at the end that, oh, now I have all the information I need for you, back to your cell, let's forget about you, orcs, take her away, she's not like actually going to be his collaborator or anything. So yeah, it's kind of sad at the same point, but it's very, very interesting to get these moments of comparison between the elves and the orcs and how they treat one another, and what each race deserves, etc.
Galadriel was, for me, the worst character of season 1. And in season 2, he's better than season 1. But as I said, the level was very, very low. So it was easy to make Galadriel better. This scene particularly doesn't help her character development. But I really like that they put in front of Adar, that people, I think most of the people love Adar, a totally invented character like Arondir and Adar, two invented characters are the best elves of the show. And that says a lot about the show, about good things and bad things. But it's crazy that we have to debate, are you Team Adar or Team Galadriel? It's totally nuts, but that's the point of the show that we are watching now. And of course, Adar makes very good points. And as people are saying in the chat, that was totally my idea. Adar is giving her a feast to show that he's an elf. He said Uruk. He, in the last episodes, he said, Elen si alume no me entiendo. Because he's an elf. He's an elf that betrayed his race in order to be the father of the orcs. That is a very interesting approach and very interesting design of character. But he's showing that he's her equal. You cannot be the equal of the legendary Galadriel, okay? The niece of one of the biggest elves in the history of the world, and being herself one of the most important figures on the history of the Middle. Simple as that. But he's able to be in the same level of Galadriel in a conversation, and it's interesting. I think that it's a bit sad, as we said, that at the end, okay, I manipulated you. You gave me all the info I needed. Back to the jail. It's a bit sad, but that's the Galadriel that we are having in this show. Of course, this Galadriel is totally far, far away from Tolkien Legendarium, but that's what happens when you make Galadriel a warrior, when you make Galadriel a captain of the elven troops. At the same time, you cannot make that character to be battling all day. And in my opinion, the writers of this season didn't know what to do with Galadriel this season, so they put her literally in a jail for 3, 4, 5 episodes, just to people to forget that this character is not exactly the best character in the show.
Now, the only thing I'm going to give as a little pushback, and I think it was James Tauber from Digital Tolkien Project that we had on 2 weeks ago who said this. If it was someone else, I'm really sorry for misquoting, but that pointed out that that Adar was one of the elves likely that woke up, alongside Círdan and stuff at Cuivianen. In which case, there is an argument to make that he, being older than Galadriel, is actually one of the few characters here who could have a claim to have sort of seen the ages of the world and have the wisdom of Galadriel, and perhaps even play an important role in why he's sort of in this position that he's in now. So I don't know that I'm qualified to weigh in on that. I just think it's an interesting counterpoint. Shiv, Javi, V, do you guys have anything to say about that, or push back, or anything else that you think?
I think in general, Adar is a very interesting addition to the show. Like, it was one of the top choices that they could make. I don't know how far they looked for the Moriondor and the Dark Elves and the twisting of Morgoth to them. But I think you can definitely see that at least they read a couple of the letters of Tolkien discussing the autonomy of orcs and their rights to live and stuff like that, and their communities. And seeing basically a proto-orc is even more interesting to me, and something that I don't think any of us expected to see. Like, even when Adar Characters was announced, I don't think anyone would speculate that he's a proto-orc, meaning like an Uruk. So having him in the show, sort of balancing and reminding us the first stage and how Morgoth manipulated the elves and played that badly, and how those elves are basically abandoned and turned into the dark side. It's fairly interesting to bring that in the second age, and to, of all people, solve it in the face of Galadriel, who has been in Valinor and then back in Middle-earth. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I have to say, I think it's very fun that we've put this question to the chat. Who are you rooting for, Galadriel or Adar? And we have 34 votes in 35, and it's 54-46. That's so even. And I love, Kyle, that you didn't include both option, because that would be the easy way out. Like, let's make the people pick, So, but I think it says, for all the aspects we were talking about of maybe not great writing in some elements, I think the fact that we're feeling that there's this genuine pull between these two characters is a really nice dynamic that they've developed in a particular way. Now, I want to ask one or two more things about this, but we probably should move on soon, since we're already at 53 minutes. But one thing that occurred to me, I don't know if any of you can answer. Maybe I just missed something, or I'm forgetting something. Adar mentions about how the rings, he had heard how the rings keep the elves from fading. Did Halbrand tell him that, or did I miss a moment when someone actually told Adar that, or did he just know it? And I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out if I'm missing something there.
Maybe it's related to the messengers that were killed. I don't know, because that's for me the only explanation, because I don't know why Adar can, unless Adar has an spy on Eregion that doesn't look exactly likely. Maybe if he discovered one of the messengers who was sending the letters from Eregion to Lindon or something like that, but maybe as an elf he felt that Adar is an elf. Maybe as an elf he felt that there was like a special power, some rings connected to his race. But yes, that may be a plot hole or something that could be better written.
Also,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Vivi. Pardon me.
I wanted to add Waldrek's death to that, because basically the wolf was set free by Sauron, like Halbrand form, before he left from the camp, and then the wolf attacked Waldrek. So maybe he figured out then that, because of the connection and everything that happened. And I don't know, maybe like the messengers also, but truly is, yeah, I think we should have an explanation, because now people are like, why Adar set Halbrand free if he knew that he was Sauron? And this whole thing even goes like, did he just made him swear allegiance to him and bow just to like fulfill his egotistical, maniacal wishes? So I think it should have been explained a bit better, maybe.
Hey, really
I
quick. Oh, who you could go first?
I could be wrong, but I think there might have been some exposition when Halbrand was captured by Adar, because they kind of set up the motive like, oh, you got to go to Eregion to attack Sauron or potentially Sauron because he's making rings of power. I think there was a sentence in there that explained that the elves were using rings, but definitely could be wrong. I'm only watching the episode once to pace myself.
Hey, just want to say real quick, Mertz Yenedemirci, whatever you pronounce that. This is indeed a comedy show for dumb Americans. It's fine if you don't like the show. Please no prejudice in the comments. You don't need to say a country of 340 million people are all dumb, even if it's America. Let's just not say that about anyone. So, moving forward, I had an interesting thought. Morgoth's crown having power. This is, I was one of the people who was not a huge fan at the beginning of like how they showed Adar sort of killing Sauron with the crown, and then when they really make it a point about it being Morgoth's crown, I thought that was kind of an interesting choice. Do you think, Javi? Do you think that sort of fits within the canon of something that it's not just Adar and how do these sort of non-Maiar beings sort of take down Sauron? Is there latent power in this crown? Do you think that makes sense in the world of Tolkien?
Well, Morgoth's crown is something very iconic. Remember, that crown had the Silmarils on it, okay? And I think all of us have the image of Luthien dancing in front of Morgoth in order to distract Morgoth. And so Beren was able to take the Silmaril of the crown. So Morgoth's crown is like a very big deal. But the idea of Sauron being like the next man up, getting Morgoth crowns looks at least logical. Okay, he was the most important follower of Sauron, and after of Morgoth, and after Morgoth is over, it's time to Sauron to step up and take his crown. In my mind, Morgoth's crown should be far bigger, even more like at the same time more beautiful and more terrible, because it's the crown of a Valar, not a Maya. Okay, it's something. For me, it's not a big deal that it has magical power, because I repeat, a Valar, not a Maya. A Valar has been wearing it for a very long time. You can maybe argue, okay, without the Silmarils, it lost its power. It's not true. Morgoth has his crown before he added the Silmarils, before taking it from Fëanor's house. So it's, and even some of the leftover magic of the Silmaril maybe still like corrupting or making the crown magical or with powers. For me, it's not insane. It's one of those stuff that Tolkien never specifically developed. So putting that in a show, nobody should be alarmed or making a big claim that this is stupid, this is anti-Tolkien. It's an addendum that for me, I don't know if it's like the best idea on earth, but for me at least it works. And in a TV show like this, works. And specifically, considering all of us has the Sauron image of the Lord of the Rings movies by Peter Jackson, with Sauron wearing that crown, perfect sense.
Yeah, I think those are really great. Yeah, maybe change the sizes like the ring. These are all really great points, and it is worth pointing out that, and I think we're getting several comments about this in the chat, and this is what I remembered too, that it was made into a color to chain him after the War of Wrath. If anyone wants to contradict that because they remember better, please do so.
No, I was going to add that as well.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
I don't have my Silmarillion in front of me, so it says cool. Well, let's see. Oh, I just wanted to call out two other things about this, and then we'll move on to Numenor. But first of all, I just want to say, no question here, that Adar's dialogue, especially in this first scene, is fire. right? That line in particular, his eye bores a hole and the rest of him slithers in. Like this is where it's like you can't just say the writing is bad. It has issues. It also has some like fantastic lines, mixed in there. But I want to get your take, Shiv, on the ability of what's the actor who's now playing Adar? What's his name?
Sam Hazeldine.
Sam Hazeldine.
Sam Hazeldine. His ability to fill in and create, this sort of component of taking a role, having fidelity to this role, but also making it your own. Like, what's your take on all this? Like, what are you seeing within his character here?
I honestly was very nervous of the recasting. A lot of times in shows when that happens, it can be jarring. It can instantly take you out. This show had a bit of an advantage having the prosthetics to kind of help bridge the gap. But I think he's doing a phenomenal job. I have no notes right now. I think he's killing it. If you were to pit me between Joseph Mowell and this, it'd be hard to do that because I think he killed it in season 1. So I just, it's hard because you have the OG and now the person filling in, but phenomenal job all around, in my opinion.
Yeah. I concur. Well, just because we're running along, and we'll come back if we have more to say. But let's.
I would say, Greg, more than half the audience hasn't noticed that there has been a change in the actor.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh? Yeah, it would probably be hard to get an accurate poll on that because I don't think we're dealing with sort of casual fans who are joining our
people who watch this stream are very deep hardcore fans, but regular people who just watch the show while they are playing with their iPad and sending WhatsApp and just saw the show as any other show, that is more than half of the audience. Most of the audience is not a dedicated fan. For these people, I think they didn't notice this.
Yeah. And Shiv, I gotta agree. Like, it would be. I loved Joseph Mawle in the first one. I mean, I thought he was really like probably the best part of the first season. And yet, I would be really hard pressed to say which one I like more. And that is such a compliment to someone coming into that situation. Let's move to Numenor. This has been a storyline that I think a lot of people have sort of struggled with this season in a lot of places. Let's just get a quick sense. I want to hear your thoughts, V. In terms of, let's just talk about this first sort of couple scenes that we get here. The sort of accusations, or I guess not prosecution, the judgment of Elendil, and then sort of the aspects of what he's being asked to do and their decision of what his punishment should be and all that stuff. What did you feel about this scene right here?
So I find the whole trial task that they found in an old book and stuff like that more to the spirit of Numenor than the Nienna scene with saying farewell to the souls and stuff. Although it's really good, I think the sea trial by the Valar is an amazing addition to Numenorian lore. I really love how they are showing us Elendil staying consistent with his thoughts and not sacrificing them basically for the bigger purpose. Although I would say that the way I view Elendil right now, he's more emotional than he's strategic. So I think it's one of the character developments that they will do in order to transform him to this great king and wise king that protects his people. Because it's a bit stubborn to not accept a new ruler when all this has happened, and to jeopardize people and your life just because of a belief. And it's more strategically, since he's such an important role of the faithful, for him to lie and then organize the resistance from down the line. But what I think they're doing with his character is they are giving us his moral high ground and exposing that to us. So when it's time for him to be more strategic, we know who he is in his heart. And later down the line, we have to debate the whole Aryan scene from Friday, because I remember your comment, Gregory, from that. And it's really interesting what they've done. If they had a few more scenes before that of Aryan being closer to Kemen while Elendil was away, and of Numenor in general under Pharazôn's rule before Miriel got back from the campaign, I think it will be an even more excellent scene. The Sea Trials General for me is the strongest we have seen in Numenor, and yeah, I enjoyed it way more from what we've already seen of Numenor.
Let's jump to talking about his relationship with Iarian. Javi, I'll come to you first because I know that Shiv and V talked about it quite a bit the other day. My take, and we'll come back to what their take is on this too, because I think it's an interesting contrast and there's some good points on both sides. My take is that she's really upset about Isildur. We've been presented that she's really upset about everything that happened with Isildur, and so that's what's led her to take these actions. And now what we're seeing now is her being totally fine with sort of casting her father off. I mean, we see her being upset about her father being threatened, but it's also sort of her actions that are getting him killed. What do you think of this sort of dynamic that's sort of unfolding, and maybe more broadly sort of the relationship between their characters or their portrayals and everything? Again, we're less familiar with your points of view on all this, and love to hear what conclusions you've come to at this point in the show.
This show has created a few original, very interesting characters. Adar and Arundel are the best examples. The show has created original characters that are bad or very bad, and Arien and Kemen are two of them. I have never felt an interest in Arien, because okay, we understand that Isildur may have a daughter, but we know that Isildur has a brother. That brother has not appeared in the show. Instead of focusing in the canonical Isildur brother that we know he has, and that who became a king, which we remember, the original Argonath are not Elendil and Isildur. It's Isildur and Arien. So instead of presenting an Arien, they presented as Arien. I understand that the point, of course, I agree with everything that B said before about Elendil, that I was clapping my hands about what B said. But of course, I understand, okay, in the Numenor plot, we have to create a sympathetic female character, that is Miriel, and a non-sympathetic female character, that is Iarian. Okay, I get it. I get it from the designing, from the writer's room, creating this Numenor plot. I accept it. Okay, it's an interesting decision. The point is that for me, it has not been very well executed, and the dialogue between Arien and Elendil, when Elendil is before the trial, it had a bit of the Ned Stark kind of aura of I am going to get killed because I am very loyal to my values and my honor. But instead of having Varys, that is an amazing character talking with Ned Stark, we have Arien, that is the female daughter of a legendary figure that is non-canon, that is not very smart. For me, it's very sad, but simply doesn't work. Maybe the problem is that Arien doesn't, as you said, Greg. Maybe if the show would have shown a scene with Arien and Kemen together, maybe we would have better understood her. Maybe, but at this point, it doesn't work. For me, this is the best Numenor scene of this season, and maybe one of the best Numenor scenes of the show. But mostly because for the Miriel and Elendil scene, but sorry, but simply Arien doesn't work for me. I'm very sorry.
V, let's hear your rebuttal.
So first of all, I would say I'm more of both sides of the argument person than full-on Aryan side. It's just that I still believe that we may see an Aryan later. I haven't lost hope on that. So
they
I'm
have
keeping
to
in.
present an Arion. They have to present
Yeah,
an
they
Arion.
have to present an Aryan. So having in mind that an Aryan is somewhere else, I think they have mentioned him actually at some point with that he's somewhere in the West. Anyway, so putting an Aryan being somewhere else, and then having Isildur being lost in Middle Earth and assumed death by both his father and sister. What we have seen for this whole family, I would say, is Arian trying to give to her family a lot, but her family kind of ignoring her. Like we see that with Isildur and Beric going first to Beric, and Valandil being the one talking with Arian in the first season. We see Elendil talking a bit back to Arian, although he was a bit loving father to her. Like he's giving more attention to Isildur, his son, than he's giving to Arian. And then she was the only one left behind of the family because remember, her mother is killed. So we have to understand that from her side, she's might have been abandoned a bit from Elendil. Like they left to this whole expedition on the belief of some elf that they didn't know, and that probably Iron One wasn't very educated on. And then they returned basically defeated from the Numenorian perspective. They didn't establish anything good while they were in the Middle Earth. And Aryan lost her brother, so and while all this happening, she was probably with Kemen, and he was the one giving her all the attention that she probably needed. And Farazan as well, probably she was interacting with him a lot. So then we have Elendil coming back and being more consumed with Miriel than his own daughter. So for me, I understand Arian's rejection of her father, but at the same time, her trying to make it easier for him and trying to work out all these plea deals that he doesn't get. Because Arian is more like she doesn't believe in the Valar so much, she doesn't believe in the old ways. She's not a faithful anymore. She might be raised like one, but she's not. So for me, this character is a bit. I would love to see more of her because I understand by the what is underground sort of. Sorry, the English isn't Englishing right now for me. So from what is under of the character, I understand some of the nuances that she has, and I love Emma Horvath's acting with her and what she's doing with the character. At the same time, I understand Elendil and the duty that he feels to Numenor and what he has to do to protect the people that he believes in, and Miriel most of all. So for me, Arian is more of a tragic character that is torn apart between duty and family. And the same happens with Elendil, but on the opposite side of duty. And for me, that's very interesting and very intelligent. And if it was more exposed on the screen, I think it would be an amazing story arc to have the different political principles in a family and how that tears it apart. But that doesn't happen in the show, and it's mostly a headcanon of me.
You have dedicated far more character, analyzing this character more time than anyone I have ever seen online. I would say even more than the writers of the show. You have totally analyzed and dissected the character with far more love and interest that any of the writers of the show has ever dedicated. If all you said that I was, wow, Erin is super interesting. Anything of what you said, I would have seen on a screen. I have not seen it on screen. You totally analyze totally
I
the
know.
character. But it's like this is like the manual of the character. And you said totally okay, the dynamic of the family, she really the faithful. Everything is perfect. The problem is that you said perfectly, but in the show,
that's my problem as well. Like I
imagine that. I can now looking with your eyes, I can see that behind her. But I wasn't able to see it before.
Yeah, and I think it's the lived experience of many female fans of Tolkien because we have so little information of some of the female characters that we add all these headcanon pieces ourselves. So I do that with almost every female character that you will see in the series. Like I can bring you a manual of most of the female characters like that and what I've understood from that, because that's what we do. And that's why also one of the reasons I love Rings of Power, because for some female characters, they do it excellent. But for Arryn, in this case, they don't show almost anything. It's like nothing. Yeah,
But
I would love
just
to
a
see.
single comment. Eregion doesn't know that Kemen killed Valandil, for example. We don't know anything about that. I guess she knows, but Valandil was very close to Kemen. In fact, and Valandil, I think one of the biggest reasons of Valandil getting killed was because Kemen was very jealous of Valandil, because how close. So we don't have a single dialogue, single scene that shows us, okay, one guy gets killed because the other guy fancied me.
Also, one thing I mentioned on Fridays, we haven't seen what Arryn has seen on the Palantir, so we don't know if the Palantir showed her the fall of Numenor or something else from her future that it has showed to other people. So this is also one thing that we don't have nuance about her.
I think that last point is actually a really great point, that especially I will be very impressed that the writers come up with something that sort of makes everything fit based on what she saw there. I would crossing my fingers for that. I'm just going to move us along because we still have 2 storylines to get to. And I also still have 2 things I want to ask about this storyline really quick. But thank you for the awesome dialogue about it. And yes, I think what Vicky says in the comments is it's the same as what you just said. We just needed to see more of this, right? It's a medium of showing things. So, it's cool to, do this back analysis, but it needs to show up on screen somewhere, so 2 more things. Okay, I'm going to add just one snarky comment about the Numenor thing really quick. Why does Miriel, a blind woman, keep walking into rooms at dramatic moments or showing up in places at dramatic moments with no one leading her? And she's just like there alone, no like guide, like, it's just like, here's the first one. Watch, she just comes in and right. Just perfect. I guess she just, okay. And then the second one, and this is my segue into the next scene that I wanted to talk about, is in with the sea creatures. And she does the same thing when she volunteers to go up instead of Elendil, and she just appears, and she's had no allies, like no one. Yeah. Anyway, but that's just my one little snarky comment. Yep. Just waltzes up. So Shiv, I wanted your no questions about that. That's just my. I just wanted to use that as a bridge to get to this scene. Shiv, what did you think about this sort of dynamic of this back and forth and her basically being like, Elendil, get in your place. This is important and this needs to happen. Do you think that it's an effective way to sort of further the story? And then what do you think about the way in which that, she was found to be innocent, and where does that leave us now in terms of this Numenor storyline? Is she in charge, or is Farazan in charge, and what's coming next? It seems like the writers sort of taken us in a different direction than we expected.
Great question. Yep. It's similar to the Friday stream where we're like, what does it mean? One of the points that I brought up on the Friday stream was it's interesting that she chose the white dress. The eagle came to her father when he was wearing the white uniform. So it's interesting that she chose that. Goes to the sea trial, passes. I thought it was pretty powerful. It is kind of like a movie cliche, but it still managed to catch me off guard because with the show, I don't even know what to expect anymore because we kind of fill ourselves with headcanon and then it doesn't kind of live up to what we were thinking. I don't mean that in a negative light, just mean like as we're hypothesizing, looking at like the trailers, we kind of, I think this means this. And then like for this scene in particular, we saw like the woman underwater. I guess some people theorized pretty fast it was Miriel, but I was like, I don't know who that is for right now. So yeah, I really liked how this scene progressed, and you kind of posed the question we posed at the end of the Friday stream of just like everyone's chanting Tar Miriel now. So does that mean she's the queen? Like, what's gonna happen? We know. Oh, this is nice. I can actually talk about some of the Tolkien works because we're not. This is the spoilerly stream. This is great. Yeah, like Farazan's supposed to marry her. So is this a way to get towards that? Like he tried to usurp her. Now she's queen. Now he's got to like. Oh, unfortunately, in one of the versions, he's forcefully, or in a lot of the versions actually, forcefully goes for that marriage. So maybe we're moving towards that now, which it's canon. So it'd be nice to see.
That's a really good point. Javi, I think you had mentioned something about the location of this.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. I am very happy to say this was filmed in Spain. In Spain, in the Canary Islands. I will write it in here in the comments. Is Charco de la Laja. Okay, I'm going to write it because I understand maybe difficult to understand. But this is a very beautiful place. You can actually swim in that location in Tenerife, in Canary Islands. Very, very beautiful place. And they filmed it last year, 2023. They filmed in more location of the Canary Islands. In fact, they have used Canary Islands for a lot of films the recent years because you have to actually pay less taxes if you film in Canary Islands than in the peninsular Spain, and they have used it for the one for example for The Witcher and for some fantasy recent films, and some rune scenes of Rings of Power were also filmed in Canary Islands. And whoever discovered this spot is a very, very beautiful location in Canary Islands. And that's what the first thing I wanted to say. Second, that we may criticize the scripts or the writing of the show, but the location are amazing. Now, I don't say just because it's Canary Islands, it's Spain, but all the location in England, the location in New Zealand, of course, in season 1. I remember, I think it was last episode, that image of Galadriel and Elrond company going in the forest, that view from the top of the mountains, that was cinema. So the skills of the production department that is responsible of filming location is totally superb. And for me, there is no show on earth right now that is being streamed in any platform that looks so beautiful. The exterior scenes are so beautiful as Rings of Power, and maybe that's why I love so much this show. But for me, this scene was for me the best of. For me, it's very easily. For me, was the best Numenor scene of this show, because in this scene we had Elendil, that is not total canon Elendil, be explained very well, but we have Elendil, we have Miriel. The Miriel of this show is not exactly Tolkien's Miriel, but I love how brave she is. I really love Miriel in this show. And we have Farazan. And this Farazan is very, very Tolkien for me. It's very canonically Tolkien. I really like the Farazan of this show. So in a Numenor scene, when we have the best 3 Numenor characters in the same scene being protagonists, within a beautiful location, with a great special effects team, and the Kraken and everything, absolutely 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 a scene for me.
Yeah, I think that's actually, it's very funny that's sometimes a critique I've heard of the show, that like it looks too pretty or something like that. I'm like, a lot of it's like done in camera, like really impressive practical effects, or just choosing incredibly beautiful locations. I'm like, I'm sorry, Earth is so great. Like, like what a weird critique. But I just want to pay a little mention to what Vicky said in the comments about the insubordination that we see from some of the hangers-on and the servants and heralds, as well as what you mentioned about the ladies in waiting for the historical dramas. I think those are both good sort of examples of things that would maybe help the sort of Numenorian plot line feel maybe a little more lived in. But I am with you that this, and I personally thought that the shot underwater with the worm, where its tentacles all start to come around, was just beautifully composed, just visually beautifully composed. Yeah. Let's move on. Like I said, two more storylines, and we're almost at an hour and a half. So first of all, let's talk about the stranger and who could he possibly be after this episode. I just want to get a quick take before we talk about this. What are you guys' opinion about what we've seen from Tom before this episode? Have you guys been sort of Tom Bombadil in this portrayal fans at this point? Again, we're talking about through episode 5. Just a quick yes or no. Just give me we'll go top to bottom. Shiv?
Yeah, I'd say for the most part.
Javi?
Yes, before this episode.
And V?
Same with Javi.
Okay, no, that's great fodder and great segue. Let's talk about this episode. I'm going to start with you, V. It sounds like, based on what I'm hearing from you, that maybe your opinion changed after this episode, or maybe I misunderstood that. But what's your opinion on this?
So it's not that I entirely dislike Tom Bombadil. Is that I really loved him in the first episode. After seeing some critics, I understood like that he could probably go to a more serious character, and that couldn't be like a bit further from what we imagine of old Tom Bombadil. But especially with like the line that he had that is reminiscing of the quote from the books about life and death. For me, it's one of my favorite quotes from the book. So I was, as I said on Friday, I was really delightful to hear it. At the same time, coming from Tom Bombadil, it didn't feel very Tom Bombadil to hear that. It was a bit too serious, I think, for him, and he seems to be going more of a master, like to help stranger teach his abilities and stuff like that, than just a friend along the way that I think would be more fitting for Tom Bombadil to be. I mean, given that he had come to Ruin to investigate it being a desert, you would expect that the Saurons didn't take him as just the jolly version from the books, but they took him a bit more seriously than he actually is. I still like Bombadil, but I have my reservations a bit more now for how long we will see him in the show and how much, like in future seasons, we will get of him. And
yeah,
I wouldn't like him being too much in the way of Middle-earth. So yeah.
You're saying we're getting a little too much Mr. Miyag-Badil.
Oh,
Exactly.
He's telling Gandalf to wax on and wax off, which actually I just slipped with my next question. Do you think, Javi, that line, as V mentioned, many in life, many that live deserve death, many that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? That's my approximation off the top of my head. Do you think that firmly, fully, finally gave it away that this really is truly Gandalf and we should stop looking elsewhere? Or do you still have other things?
I can say you that before the end of the season, we will have a total reveal of who this character is, this stranger, okay? But I won't say that.
We cannot ask.
I can confirm you that when the season is over, we will totally confirm who this character is, okay? And I cannot say anything else that you can imagine. But, well, about Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil is very interesting and it was very risky. Tom Bombadil is a Tolkien's joke, okay? Tolkien Bombadil is a poem that he wrote years and years before writing of the Rings, that because Tolkien is simply the best, he managed to put it in a very serious, not in The Hobbit, in a very serious book, I Love the Rings, and somehow it worked. It worked in a very specific location, totally freezing the plot without destroying the narrative. Okay, slowing a bit the narrative, but not destroying the narrative. And it worked. In the book, it worked. it could never work in Peter Jackson movies. I really like that Peter Jackson at the end include Tom Bombadil, because if we remember when the hobbits are running away from the Nazguls, you cannot do that scene and just enter in Tom Bombadil and being 10 minutes singing and clapping and drinking tea and just Tom puts the ring and nothing happens. It would totally break the riff of the movie in that point of the movie. So Peter Jackson was very smart, and I would say, for me, better than Peter Jackson, Fran Wells and Philippa Boyens, that for me are the true queens of those movies. They made the correct decision. For Rings of Power, I was I had no hopes. I had no hopes in the Rings of Power for Tom Bombadil. It looked like a very cheap move of, I can put this character because I paid 250 million in order to be able to pay to introduce this character in the show. And it's impossible that this character works in the show. But somehow, the first scenes of Tom Bombadil, episode 4, if I recall correctly, were good. Were not excellent, were not perfect, but were not a disaster. This, of course, was not Tom Bombadil Tolkien, because Tom Bombadil Tolkien, remember, it's a joke. It's not a real character. It worked. It worked. The dialogue, the scenes, he was a bit serious but acceptable. And it worked. And in this episode, he's too serious. As we said, he's too serious. And didn't like it. And this scene, the scene that we are seeing now on the screen, when he's like, choose your friends or choose your mission, Tom Bombadil would never say anything like that. But we have Rory Kinnear, that is an excellent actor, that he's doing as best as he can with his role. So I would say this is the lowest episode of Tom Bombadil. We will see more of Tom Bombadil in episode 8, if I recall correctly, and Tom Bombadil in episode 8 will be more like Tom Bombadil in episode 4, that I think most of us like.
Javi, you're making me excited to hear that. And I'll just say, my main problem with Tom Bombadil, I'll just expand off what you just said, was exactly that point about the element of talking about destiny and your friend or your destiny. I don't, in general, hate that there's the idea of a character giving this advice to a young, now that we heard that line before, that what I assume will be Gandalf. And this is more of a Gandalf origin story than some crazy reveal or whatever. I don't mind that idea. The problem for me is that Tom Bombadil is, his whole point of the character is something outside of this politicking and outside of this good versus bad, and that he's just not a part of that world. And that was what Tolkien loved about him, was this mystery and this sort of, I think he called it, he almost talked about like the natural sciences or something of Tolkien, right? And seeing this, that someone who could just observe the world as it is, rather than trying to partake in the specific actions of how it changes, but I do agree with you about Roy Kinnear being great, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the rest of it. And Shiv, I want to come to you for the last person to talk about this, because the last thing I'll say is just also, where's the singing? We got no singing in this episode. I don't think he doesn't have to sing everything, but you got to have at least a little singing in every episode that you have Tom Bombadil. Otherwise, it's not the same character. But
you will hear again Tom singing. I promise you.
I'm going to come to you to finish this off, Shiv, because you are the most optimistic person I know, and I know you're going to have a good, fun way to push back on this a little bit. And I just want to hear your thoughts on, like, what is there to like about Tom here? What are you seeing when we're watching this? Or feel free to chime in with the same opinion too. But I just want to get your thoughts.
It's so funny you said that, because while everyone was talking, I was like trying to think, how do I spin this? How do I think of the positive out of this? The only thing I was able to arrive to right now is, it's a stretch, so I'll preface it with that. But when you were mentioning that, like, Tom is kind of like, he doesn't really care for what's going on in the world. It's just he's in his own like bubble, and he's not trying to meddle, similar to like how like Maiar and stuff are supposed to be. The way I kind of can theorize how this interaction goes with him is he's basically saying, yeah, like, choose your destiny, man. I don't care, whatever you want to do. And then he disappears. So maybe that's his way of like meddling, not meddling. It's a stretch. I'm sorry, but that was the best I could do with it. I guess with everything, like, we got to see the storyline all the way through too. Like we don't have all the answers right now. Maybe Javi has it because he saw the other episodes, but at least for the season. But I think there's more to come, and I try not to judge too harshly. And I'm kind of in the boat of just, let's see how all the seasons go before we get super critical on a lot of it. But I don't know. Overall, like, going back to positivity, we're seeing Tom Bombadil for the first time on screen in like a modern adaptation. So that's really cool. So at least we got that.
I knew we could count on you, Shiv.
I would say, was it necessary? Was it necessary?
Well, you know what?
Was he necessary?
If he ends up leading the Harfoots to finding a place where they can settle down, perhaps by the Vale of the Anduin or whatever, then that, so that setting up their journey to eventually go over, in lands in Breetown and all that stuff, that would be cool. But whatever. In which case, that would be I think that would be a cool piece of writing and storyline. That being said, because we are going to, I think, tonight cut the Harfoots for time, as perhaps the showrunner should have done.
Oh my god,
that was brutal.
Damn.
Did I say the quiet part out loud there? But let's get to the dwarves, because I think that's a really important thing to talk about tonight, or today for some of you. Still, I'm in Budapest, so it's late. I want to get your take. Let's start with you, Javi, because I know how Shiv and V feel about this. This element of the hoarding that we're seeing from Durn 3 as a result of the rings. Do you feel that that's canonical with the dwarven rings? Like, they are sort of known for being easily tempted by greed, not corrupted in the way men are, but easily, tempted by greed. Would the dwarven rings do that? What's your take?
In my opinion, but I understand why it's done like that in the show. In my opinion, it happened a bit fast, okay? Because dwarves, I have to say, first of all, I love dwarves in Rings of Power. I love Durin and I love Disa. Durin and Disa are super during the fourth, and Disa is wow. Disa is one of the best female characters I have seen in years. I thought I love Disa, and I love what the dynamic during Disa in the show. And so I think almost everything that the show does with dwarves is excellent. My complaint is that for me the corruption of the ring of Durin the Third is the king of the dwarves, the king of Khazad-dum, should be very, very resistant. It should take more time to actually corrupt Durin the Third, but this is a TV show, okay? It would be bad TV for Durin to take 2 seasons or 3 seasons to actually be so corrupted by the ring. So I myself, I love dwarves, but I can accept that my race, at least it's not a joke, like Gimli's character in Peter Jackson movies, that is a total joke. So I am very, very happy with this duo, so I can forgive that they are making the corruption too fast. And I think it's a bit fast, but I can imagine Tolkien designing something like this. Okay, you put the ring, you get more connection with the mountain. You're actually made of, you were created by Aule even before the elves. You are so connected with the rock, with the ground, with the mountains. So you can have like here in the mountains, seems fine for me, and that he's not. I like that Durin the Third is not a monster. He doesn't want to kill the people. He just wants to dig more. He wants more ore. He wants more mithril. He wants more gold. It works very well for me, and it of course, during the third cannot be I am going to kill my son because he's stopping me for dining for mining. I will just push him away. Works very, very well for me. Very, very well for me.
Yeah, and I do think there's this element of point out about what we've seen before, even in like The Hobbit, with dragon sickness or gold sickness, whatever you want to call it, and the dwarves are notoriously susceptible for that, but maybe we just needed a bit more time. I want to pick up on what some of the comments are that we're getting here. Who is it who said it first? Maybe it was Julia. Oh no, Storyteller's response to Julia. I almost started crying when he started crying. Talking about Durin 4 as Durin 4's reaction to what's going on with his dad, and I just want to talk about that scene a little bit. V, what did you see here and sort of the relationship here, and do you think it was justified for Disa to say, I love your dad as much as you love your dad, and what do you think of Durin 4's reaction here to everything?
So we already know the classes that had happened between the two Durins from the season 1, and it reminds me a lot of the reaction of Elrod when he was talking about his dad during season 1. So we see that during the 4th also has a very strong relationship with his father, and he understands that he's slowly losing his father to the ring. For me, with how fast it's happening, actually, I didn't mind as much as I thought I would mind that time compression of the corruption of during the third. And I find it very moving that we are seeing this element of talking here, and both Owain and Rob Aramayo have portrayed it very well. And this is the bonding between family and how much one another means to each other, and especially to the younger generation, how connected they are to their parents. And also, I was very surprised that they gave us a bit more fleshing out of Disa, that thing about her father actually not being that much in there for her, and during the third being more of her father than her actual father. I really loved that little detail that we were getting from her and how close she feels. But at the same time, she has to think first of her husband and the two children that they have. So I think Disa is looking more into the future, and she's more perceptive at this time of what this change of character means for their family. Whereas during the 4th, because we are talking about his actual father, cannot make this connection and cannot see that it's really is necessary. So I think it's really important that they had Disa to sway him and to persuade him to the moves that he had to take next in order to change the fate of their kingdom, basically, in their eyes at least. So yeah, it's very moving and interesting scene.
Yeah, Shiv, what are your takes on sort of where this storyline is going with the dwarves? I mean, do you think that the way that they're sort of taking on this question of the two Durins makes sense? One thing I've noticed is it doesn't really seem like Disa and Durin sort of have their own obvious coalition against Durin 4. Is there a reason for that, and where do you sort of expect this to go?
Yeah, I got a couple things. One, I'm going to be opening up old wounds for a second, but hopefully it's for a good cause. I remember all the backlash for season 1 where they're like, they're going to have two Durins at the same time, like breaking lore and all that.
Right.
This is another example of a really good relationship in the show. Like, yeah, it would have been cool if they were able to figure out a different way to do it. Like maybe he isn't named Durin or something, but this is another example of it's one of the better storylines in the show, and it's better for it. And with time compression, figuring out the most creative way to do it too. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up real quick. For this, it is interesting. We kind of got glimpses in the trailer of a couple things. Like we saw Elrond coming and basically asking for his axe and all that, if I remember correctly. I wonder if we're going to get a little bit of what we got in season 1, where Durin the Third is just like, I don't want to deal with any of this. So Durin the Fourth has to go against his father's back again to fight and help his elven friends out. So it's just going to be further straining the relationship. So we have all this at play, but then we have the Balrog in the background doing whatever he's doing right now. So there's darkness looming over them at a grander level of just this internal family squabbling. So I'm sure at some point it's going to get extra tragic, and the bickering between the families is going to be lesser important, unless something happens to drastically change the family dynamic beforehand. But it's interesting to put it in that perspective too.
That's a good point. Hold on one second. I just want to get your guys' take. I mean, we've sort of seen a really interesting interplay between the dwarves and sorry to exclude you from this one, Javi, because I know you already know the answer. We're getting this really interesting interplay between earlier in the season between the dwarves and Eregion. I would love to hear someone's take on where they think this is going to go by the end of the season in terms of this relationship. Do you think that there's more to come in terms of, what we're seeing between these two storylines? Are they going to sort of dovetail again? We do know, of course, that there's, the elves are coming down to Eregion, but where do the dwarves fit in this? Does anyone have like a good prediction for that?
I mean, I think the trailer sometime during the 4th says something about helping our friends. I don't remember the exact line, so I think he's referring to the elves, and it seems like sort of preparing the dwarves for war or something. So, and I've seen this theory float around Twitter a lot, that Elrond will go to Khazad-dum again to ask the aid of the dwarves for the sack of Eregion, and probably I really hope it does happen, and we're gonna see again Elrond in Khazad-dum, and during going to help the elves with Eregion. I don't remember from the canon if the dwarves did help with Eregion. It would definitely make sense, but I think they didn't, or at least they were not on time, as Elrond wasn't on time as well. This is a theme here. So I think we're gonna see this getting more complicated, but that's the best I can give you.
Well, we are at we're closing in on 2 hours, so I feel like we should wrap up. But before I just sort of unilaterally end this and go into our closing comments, I just want to say, is there any part of this we kind of glossed over a whole bunch of stuff just because we were having so many great conversations, and it's great conversation, talking about so many things. Is there anything you guys wanted to address or talk about before we move to sort of my closing questions for you guys?
I would just say this episode has one Arondir scene. That scene for me was not necessary, but I would say that Arondir is a superb character, one of the most brilliant additions of the show, to show an elf that is not a known elf, Galadriel, Celebrimbor, but you actually care a lot about Arondir. So he has a character arc very, very, very good in the first season. We have seen in the second season, and when Eregion appeared, I don't care. When Arondir appeared, I care a lot. Not just because Ismael Cruz Cordova is an amazing actor, very sympathetic guy. I have met him twice, and because he's a very well-written character. And both his scenes with trees are the more Elvis scenes in all Rings of Power, with the ends in episode 4 and before using the axe in season 1. He's so good, Aaron. He's so good. So we have been complaining about this show about, for example, the Hardfoots, but when some characters in a kind of this show are very good ideas, and whoever designed Arondir or Adar are brilliant people.
Javi, I just want to say real quick, when I sort of take some notes while I'm watching so that I can do the stream with some ideas of what we can talk about. And I often have to catch myself to make sure I'm not just writing negative stuff, because often it's the negative things that sort of take you out and make you think to write something. And the good things can get lost because you're just sucked in and watching. And I think that's what happened here with me forgetting to bring up Arondir, is just because he's so, he is really such a lovely character. And I think he's better this season than he was last season, in my personal opinion, with the exception.
I don't agree. I prefer Arondir season 1 and Arondir season 2.
Well, hold on. Let me just say, I was going to give the exception of that moment with the axe and the tree, which maybe was my favorite single moment, or it was one of my 2 favorite single moments in the entire first season. So I have to give a particular shout out to that. But I think his character is more consistent so far.
It was Ismail's idea. It wasn't in the script.
Really?
Really? It was Ismail's idea. Yes, it wasn't in the script to actually. Sorry, dear tree, I'm going to cut you. Yes, it was Ismail.
Nice.
There is an hilarious thing about Ismail I can say because it's public. When Ismail was in the Spanish premiere of Rings of Power season 2, and he was asked, "What character of the Lord of the Rings universe would you like to be?" And he said, "Gandalf." And I think no one imagined Ismail Cruz Córdoba as Gandalf. But he said, "Oh, I would love to be Gandalf because Gandalf is very cool. He's sometimes smoking with his pipe, and then he's fighting a big guy, and he's like very serious and then very, very joke." And nobody was imagining Ismail Cruz Córdoba as Gandalf, but he was so nice when, and I think it's recorded. He was so we were laughing a lot when he has read Tolkien. Ismail Cruz Córdoba has read Tolkien, and he was saying, also with a very funny accent for me being Spanish, because he has a Dominican accent, a very funny accent, and it was hilarious. I think you may search for it online, but Ismail Cruz Córdoba saying that he would like to be Gandalf was gold.
Nice.
Really quick before I go to our closing tradition, Shiv, anything else that you guys want to bring up?
I think let's close it because it's closing always.
Yeah. So first off, okay. So Javi, what we normally do is we start with our least favorite thing from this episode, our favorite thing from this episode, and what we're looking forward to most in the next episode. For that last one for you, I'm going to say give it in like maybe just since you've seen it, maybe something along the lines of what's a storyline that you think people are going to really like in the next episode. And we'll come to you last since you have some premonition about this. Why don't we go? We'll start with you, V.
The thing I dislike the most is Hardfoots. I totally don't care about Hardfoots. I am very sorry. And Sturs, I am very sorry. Some people think they are cute. I am simply not interested in them. What I like the most is that final minutes of the episode, the transition of Eregion is gold. Is simply excellent, superb, outstanding TV. Those final 1-2 minutes are outstanding TV. And for the next episode, we know there's going to be a battle, okay? But there is one fight in the battle that is going to make all of us very worried.
Okay.
Nothing else.
We'll leave it with that ominous note. V, what about you?
So my least favorite moment, I would say, I would say Stranger and Tom Bombadil, maybe. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about the scene, but it's not like because I had totally discussed or didn't like it at all. But in my opinion, it was a very good episode, and it's very hard for me to pick a bad scene from this episode. I don't know why people trust this episode a lot, but I loved it. Anyways, my favorite, I think it's also the transition, like the one they did with one shot from the illusion of Anadar to the actual state of Eregion under attack. And what I'm most looking forward to, since we are now knowing we are going into a battle and we've seen some people in armor, and surprised to no one, I wanted to see Elrod being as strong as a warrior and pick up his sword and slay some orcs. So yeah.
I'll go next. My least favorite was the sort of writing and sort of the way that the ordering of events happened in the Numenor scene. My favorite was the writing of the first scene between Adar and Galadriel. Yeah, I just thought that was awesome. And what I'm looking forward to next season or next episode, I've got to say, I want to see how the battle unfolds. Like, let's see what happens in Eregion. You know, there's got to be some fun surprises in there. And you know, I have a feeling we're going to see some more around here, so I'm looking forward to that too, if that happens. Shiv, how about yourself?
All right. Least favorite, I would say, is when Tom Bombadil did that quote from Gandalf. Like, that was the first quote I felt like it kind of took me out of the episode for a second. I haven't felt that with any of the other quotes used in previous episodes, but that one got me. Favorite, I guess, is a tie between Miriel stepping in for Elendil. I thought that was a great scene. And then one I mentioned on the Friday stream was when Anatar lifts up his arms as the orcs are coming across the river. The orchestral's tuning up, and it just sounds really awesome. So I really loved that touch there. But yeah, and then for, I guess, future episodes, I don't know if this is not a fan favorite or not, but I'm really curious to see where this whole Galadriel Anatar crowns show off thing. I want to see what happens with that, because it's in the trailer. What the heck is it? A vision? Is it something where they're actually in person together? So I look forward to seeing where that concludes.
Everybody, please put in the comments your least favorite, your favorite, or what you're looking forward to. And we really want to know what you guys think about that. And in the meanwhile, Javi, do you want to share with everybody your socials, or where they can find you or follow the fun work that you're doing?
Well, you have heard that English is not my first language, so you can follow me on Twitter. And if you like Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, check Los Siete Reinos. That website, Los Siete Reinos, is my website. I have a YouTube channel, but I speak very fast. So if you don't understand the Spanish, you won't understand anything I say in Spanish language. But my website is about A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. I post theories, essays, analysis, of course, news. And my YouTube channel is called Javi Marcos, but as I said, I speak very fast, so you won't understand me speaking in Spanish. And the last thing I would say, first of all, thanks again for inviting me here. And second, today is Frodo and Bilbo's birthday, so we should everyone. It's Hobby Day. It's international. It's like institutional. The American Tolkien Society created it 40 years ago or something like that. So everyone should cheer today for Bilbo and Frodo in his birthday. So we should be all drink a bit in honor of Bilbo and Frodo. Yes.
Javi, thank you so much for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that from the get-go. That's like a really sort of root thing why we're all here, is because we all love Tolkien, and I think it's an important day to recognize. So everybody, thanks again for joining us on another marathon. Kyle, fantastic job. Everyone give props to Kyle in the background. Give him some love in the comments. And everybody, thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, Gregory, for hosting.